Steve Jobs had a masterful way of opening his keynotes, captivating his audience from the very first moment. His approach was never rushed or overly dramatic. Instead, it was built on simplicity, clarity, and a deep sense of anticipation. He understood that the opening of a keynote set the tone for the entire presentation, and he always began with a carefully crafted message that engaged his audience immediately. His choice of words was deliberate, his pauses were purposeful, and his delivery exuded confidence. One of his most famous keynote openings was at the 2007 iPhone launch. He walked onto the stage, looked at the audience, and with a calm, controlled voice, he said, "Thank you. Thank you all for coming." That simple acknowledgement immediately created a connection. He followed it with a sentence that sparked curiosity. "This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years." With that single line, he made everyone in the room lean in, making them feel as though they were about to witness something truly special. He continued by setting the stage for the big reveal, using a storytelling technique that framed Apple's history as a company that had introduced revolutionary products before. He reminded the audience of the Macintosh in 1984, a product that changed the personal computing industry. He then referenced the iPod in 2001, which transformed the way people listen to music. By establishing this pattern of groundbreaking innovations, he subtly built anticipation, leading the audience to wonder, what's next? Jobs then made a statement that defined the moment. "Today we are introducing 3 revolutionary products." He didn't reveal what they were right away. Instead, he allowed curiosity to build, listing them one by one. The first is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. Then came one of the most brilliant rhetorical techniques he ever used. He repeated the list multiple times, emphasizing each one separately, until finally delivering the punchline. "Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone." At that moment, the audience erupted in applause. This reveal was executed perfectly, as Jobs had spent the first few minutes of his keynote creating anticipation and curiosity, only to bring it all together in one dramatic moment. He didn't just introduce a product, he built a narrative around it, making the audience feel as if they were part of something historic. Another key element of his opening was how he made the product personal. He didn't simply talk about features and specifications, he spoke about what the product meant for people. He framed it as something that would change the way they interacted with technology. He positioned Apple as a company that didn't just make gadgets but revolutionized industries. The way he spoke about the iPhone made it clear that this was more than just another smartphone, it was the future. The pacing of his opening was another critical factor. He didn't rush through his words or overload the audience with information too quickly. Instead, he used well-placed pauses, allowing each statement to sink in. His confidence was evident, not in a boastful way, but in a manner that conveyed absolute certainty in the product he was unveiling. His ability to control the energy in the room made his keynote openings feel less like a presentation and more like an experience. What made his keynote opening so effective was the way it appealed to both logic and emotion. He provided historical context, reinforcing Apple's track record of innovation, which logically led to the expectation that they were about to do it again. At the same time, he tapped into the audience's emotions, building excitement and making them feel as if they were witnessing history in the making. This combination of strategic storytelling, careful pacing, and powerful delivery was what made Steve Jobs' keynotes unforgettable. Steve Jobs had an innate ability to simplify complex ideas, making them digestible and memorable for his audience. One of his most effective techniques was the Rule of 3, a principle in communication and storytelling that suggests ideas presented in threes are more satisfying, impactful, and easier to remember. He used this method consistently in his keynotes, structuring his presentations around 3 key themes, 3 major product features, or 3 big ideas. This approach helped guide his audience through his narrative in a way that felt natural and intuitive. At the 2007 iPhone keynote, he used the Rule of 3 masterfully. Instead of simply announcing the iPhone as a new product, he strategically built anticipation by telling the audience that Apple was introducing 3 revolutionary products that day. He stated them one by one: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. He repeated the list again, ensuring the audience fully absorbed the significance of each element. He then delivered the moment of realization, The twist that no one saw coming: these were not three separate devices, but a single device, the iPhone. The audience erupted into applause, not just because the product was impressive, but because Jobs had taken them on a journey, allowing them to discover the innovation rather than simply being told about it. By structuring the announcement in this way, he ensured that the audience would remember the core value proposition of the iPhone. It was not just a phone, not just an iPod, and not just an internet device. It was all three seamlessly integrated into one revolutionary product. This was a defining moment in product marketing, where instead of listing features, he told a story that made the device feel indispensable. His use of the rule of three extended beyond just the product introduction. Throughout the keynote, he frequently grouped concepts into threes, making the technical aspects of the iPhone easier to follow. When he explained the iPhone's user interface, he highlighted three major breakthroughs: multi-touch technology, software running on a real operating system, and a completely new interaction model without a stylus or physical buttons. Each of these elements was revolutionary on its own, but by presenting them as a trio, he reinforced the idea that the iPhone was fundamentally different from anything before it. Another example of this technique in action was when he compared the iPhone to existing smartphones. He described how other phones had three major problems. They had small, cramped keyboards, complex software that wasn't user-friendly, and a lack of real innovation in their interface. By structuring the comparison this way, he made it clear why the iPhone was superior. It solved all three problems in one elegant package. He didn't need to go into overwhelming detail about each individual competitor. He simply painted a broad picture that was easy to grasp. Even in his call to action, Jobs used the rule of three. When discussing Apple's strategy, he broke it down into three essential elements: revolutionary hardware, groundbreaking software, and seamless integration. This made Apple's approach feel deliberate and cohesive, reinforcing the idea that they were not just making a phone but reinventing the entire category. Jobs' ability to break down information into threes wasn't just about making things easier to understand, it was about making them feel natural, rhythmic, and compelling. His audience didn't just process information, they experienced it. This technique was so effective that even long after his presentations ended, people could recall the core messages. The iPhone keynote became legendary not just because of what was announced, but because of how it was communicated. Steve Jobs had a unique ability to captivate his audience through storytelling and simplicity, and one of his most effective strategies was using visual storytelling instead of overwhelming slides filled with text. His presentations were not just about delivering information, they were experiences that engaged the audience on both an intellectual and emotional level. Instead of relying on bullet points or dense technical jargon, he used large, striking images, minimal words, and real-life demonstrations to communicate his message. This approach made his keynotes feel more like a performance than a traditional corporate presentation. When introducing the iPhone in 2007, Jobs didn't just list the specifications on a slide. Instead, he used powerful images and animations that highlighted the design and features of the device. As he spoke, a giant high-resolution image of the iPhone appeared on the screen behind him, giving the audience a clear and immediate understanding of what he was unveiling. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate choice to make sure that every person in the room was visually connected to the product. He knew that humans process images much faster than text, and by minimizing words on the screen, he kept the focus on his message rather than forcing people to read along. He also used real-world metaphors to make complex ideas more accessible. Instead of describing the mechanics of multi-touch technology in technical terms, he showed how easy it was to scroll, zoom, and navigate with just a few simple finger gestures. By demonstrating it live, he allowed people to see and feel the experience rather than just hear about it. This kind of visual storytelling made the technology feel intuitive and revolutionary at the same time. Another technique he used was contrast, often comparing Apple's innovation to outdated or clunky existing technology. When introducing the iPhone's interface, he displayed an image of a traditional smartphone with its small plastic keyboard and rigid button layout, emphasizing how outdated and restrictive it was. Then, he revealed the iPhone's sleek, buttonless design and multi-touch interface, making the contrast clear. This technique made it easy for the audience to immediately recognize why the iPhone was different and superior without the need for excessive explanation. Jobs also understood the power of pacing and simplicity. Unlike many presenters who overload their slides with dense information, he kept his visuals clean and straightforward. If he introduced a feature, the slide behind him might show only a single word or icon, allowing the audience to focus entirely on his words and demonstration. This not only made the message clear, but also helped retain attention throughout the keynote. He used humor and playfulness to make his keynotes more engaging. At one point during the iPhone demo, he pretended to receive a call from Starbucks and jokingly placed an order for 4,000 lats before hanging up. This lighthearted moment broke the tension and made the audience feel connected to the experience. It wasn't just about presenting a product, it was about making it feel real, relatable, and exciting. Another key element of his visual storytelling was the use of live demos. Instead of just talking about how the iPhone worked, he showed it in action. He opened Safari and loaded a web page, zoomed in effortlessly, and navigated as he would in everyday life. This approach removed any doubt about the usability of the product because people could see it working in real time. He didn't just tell them the iPhone had the best web browsing experience, he proved it right in front of them. The simplicity of his slides and the power of his visuals ensured that people focused on what mattered. By using large images, minimal text, real-world metaphors, and live demonstrations, he transformed what could have been a technical presentation into a compelling, immersive experience. His keynotes weren't just about showcasing products, they were about telling a story that people could see, feel, and remember. Steve Jobs had an unparalleled ability to bring his audience into the world of his products through live demonstrations, making them not just announcements but immersive experiences. His keynotes were never just about telling people what a product could do. They were about showing it in action, letting people see and feel its impact firsthand. The live demo was always a critical moment in his presentations, reinforcing the innovation, ease of use, and excitement of the product. He didn't just describe features, he made them real. At the 2007 iPhone keynote, one of the defining moments was when Jobs picked up the iPhone for the first time and began to use it. Instead of diving straight into a long list of technical specifications, he started with a simple yet impactful action, making a call. He scrolled through the contacts list effortlessly, showing off the multi-touch interface, then tapped on a contact to dial. The audience erupted in applause, not because making a phone call was new, but because the way he did it felt entirely different from any phone they had seen before. The smooth scrolling, the fluid gestures, and the large, vibrant screen made the process look effortless and futuristic. His demo of the multi-touch screen was another game-changing moment. He didn't just say, "You can zoom in on a photo." Instead, he pulled up an image, placed 2 fingers on the screen, and expanded them outward, making the picture grow in size instantly. The simplicity of the gesture and the natural feel of it made the audience gasp. It was as if he had just revealed a magic trick, except it wasn't magic. It was technology designed in a way that felt intuitive. When introducing web browsing on the iPhone, Jobs made it clear that this wasn't the limited, stripped-down mobile web people were used to. He loaded the New York Times website and let it appear exactly as it would on a computer. Then, with a simple pinch to zoom gesture, he enlarged the text, scrolled seamlessly, and navigated the page with fluidity never seen before on a phone. He didn't just tell the audience that the iPhone had the best browsing experience on a mobile device, he let them witness it in real time. One of the most memorable moments came when he demonstrated the power of Google Maps. He found the location, zoomed in effortlessly, and even showed real-time traffic updates. Then, in a moment of playful humor, he searched for a Starbucks nearby, and with a tap called the store. When the barista answered, he jokingly ordered 4,000 lats before quickly hanging up. The audience burst into laughter, and in that moment, the iPhone felt not just like an incredible piece of technology, but something fun and personal. Jobs also understood that a great live demo wasn't just about the product, it was about confidence and control. He rehearsed meticulously to ensure everything worked perfectly, but he was also prepared for any hiccups. During the iPhone demo, Apple engineers had set up multiple backup devices and a carefully controlled Wi-Fi network to avoid technical failures. However, Jobs remained poised and charismatic even when small glitches occurred, laughing them off and moving forward seamlessly. Beyond just showcasing features, his demos always had a deeper purpose. They created an emotional connection. He wasn't just selling a phone, he was showing how it would change everyday life. Whether it was making calls, browsing the web, listening to music, or finding a nearby restaurant, every demo was carefully crafted to highlight real-world scenarios. The audience didn't just see a device, they saw a future where technology worked the way it should, simply, beautifully, and effortlessly. Jobs made sure that by the end of the demo, people weren't just excited about the iPhone, they needed it. Steve Jobs mastered the art of creating excitement and delivering surprises in his keynotes, and one of his most famous techniques was the legendary "one more thing" moment. This was not just a gimmick, it was a strategic way of keeping the audience engaged and leaving them with a final, unforgettable announcement. It played on the psychology of expectation, making people feel as though they had seen everything only to be hit with something even more extraordinary. The one more thing moment at the 2007 iPhone keynote was slightly different from the traditional format. Instead of saving a separate product or feature for the end, Jobs used this technique to emphasize the revolutionary nature of the iPhone itself. Throughout the presentation, he had already introduced the device, demonstrated its core features, and shown how it combined a phone, an iPod, and an internet device. But then, near the end, he delivered another powerful moment that solidified just how groundbreaking this product was. He revealed that Apple had developed an entirely new way of interacting with the device, multi-touch. Unlike traditional phones that relied on physical keyboards or styluses, the iPhone allowed users to control everything with their fingers, using gestures like pinch to zoom and swiping. This was the true one more thing of the keynote, a final demonstration that left the audience stunned. He explained how Apple had filed over 200 patents for the iPhone, reinforcing that this was not just another phone, but a complete reinvention of the industry. This moment was impactful because it came when the audience already thought they had seen everything. Jobs knew how to time his reveals for maximum emotional impact, and by waiting until the end to emphasize multi-touch, he made sure it left a lasting impression. He made it clear that this wasn't just a phone with a few cool features, it was a revolutionary device that changed the way people interacted with technology. The one more thing was also about storytelling. Jobs didn't just say, "Oh, by the way, here's another feature." He built suspense, paused dramatically, and then delivered the news in a way that felt like a grand finale. This was a carefully crafted moment designed to keep the audience hooked until the very last second. Even those watching from home or reading about the keynote afterward would feel the impact, as the phrase "one more thing" had become a signature of Apple's most exciting announcements. Another reason this moment was so effective was because it was unexpected. While many keynotes from other companies followed a predictable structure, Jobs always left room for an extra surprise. The audience knew something big was coming, but they never knew exactly what. That anticipation made every keynote feel like an event rather than just a product launch. This keynote also demonstrated how Jobs used the power of simplicity. Instead of overwhelming people with too many technical details, he boiled everything down to a single, clear message: the iPhone was the future. He didn't need to list every specification or feature because he knew that what mattered most was the experience. The one more thing moment wasn't just about adding another bullet point to the presentation. It was about reinforcing the vision behind the product. Jobs understood that a great presentation wasn't just about information, it was about emotion. People didn't just walk away from his keynotes knowing about a product, they felt something. They felt excitement, anticipation, and inspiration. The one more thing was the moment that made the audience feel like they had witnessed something historic, something they would remember for years to come. It wasn't just a phrase, it was a promise that Apple would always have something extraordinary to reveal. Steve Jobs understood that a keynote wasn't just about introducing a product, it was about creating a lasting impact. The way he ended his presentations was just as important as how he began. He knew that the final moments of a keynote needed to leave the audience inspired, excited, and fully convinced that they had witnessed something historic. His closing was never rushed or filled with unnecessary details. Instead, it was carefully crafted to reinforce the vision behind the product and leave a lasting impression. At the 2007 iPhone keynote, Jobs closed in a way that elevated the moment beyond just a product launch. He didn't just recap the iPhone's features or talk about its technical specifications again. Instead, he zoomed out, placing the iPhone within a larger narrative about innovation, simplicity, and the future. He made the audience feel that this was not just another device, it was a turning point in technology. His tone became more reflective, almost philosophical, as he spoke about Apple's mission and how the iPhone represented everything the company stood for. One of his most effective techniques in his closing moments was repetition. He reminded the audience of what they had just witnessed, the three revolutionary devices he had introduced at the beginning: a widescreen iPod, a mobile phone, and an internet communicator. But he didn't just state them again, he repeated the magic moment from earlier, reinforcing that they were not separate devices but one. This repetition cemented the idea in the minds of the audience, ensuring they walked away with a clear and memorable takeaway. Jobs also knew that a great ending required an emotional connection. He wasn't just asking people to buy a phone, he was inviting them to be part of something bigger. He spoke about how Apple had changed industries before and how the iPhone was about to do the same. His words were chosen carefully, creating a sense of inevitability. He made it feel like the future had just arrived, and the audience was lucky enough to witness it firsthand. The way he controlled the energy in the room during his closing was another key element. Instead of ending with a long, drawn-out summary, he kept it concise and impactful. His pacing slowed slightly, allowing each word to land with more weight. He paused just enough to let the significance of what he was saying sink in. This created a dramatic effect, making the audience feel the gravity of the moment. Another masterful touch was how he transitioned to gratitude. Jobs always made sure to acknowledge the people who made the product possible. He gave credit to the Apple team, recognizing their hard work and dedication. This wasn't just about being polite, it was about reinforcing the idea that Apple was more than just a company, it was a group of visionaries committed to changing the world. This made the audience feel an even deeper connection to the brand. Finally, his closing moments always included a simple but powerful farewell. He didn't overcomplicate it. He often ended with a heartfelt thank you, followed by a smile and a final look at the audience. This was subtle but important detail. It left people with a sense of warmth and appreciation, rather than feeling like they were just attending a corporate event. He knew that the last few seconds of a presentation mattered just as much as the first, and he ensured that his audience left on a high note. The ending of the 2007 iPhone keynote wasn't just about wrapping up a presentation, it was about solidifying a moment in history. Jobs made sure that everyone in that room, and everyone watching later, understood that they had just witnessed something revolutionary. He didn't just introduce a product, he introduced a new era. His final words, his tone, and his carefully crafted delivery made the audience believe that the world had changed and that they had been there to see it happen.